Well, sick rink layout and all, the Stadium Series is just a few days away, but unfortunately, the Boston Bruins might have an advantage in this game for one big reason. We're going to talk about it on today's Locked on Lightning.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, we want to say thank you to our everydayers for tuning in. Those of you who tune to every single show, every single day, we love you. We appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan, and I'm joined by the Ben Zobrist, to my Evan Longoria, Greg Steven. Greg, welcome in, my friend.
Good morning. Another day closer to the Stadium Series. And let me tell you, Tampa is hyped for it. There is just stuff everywhere out here, and it's shaping up to be a good time.
Yeah, you got that. You got Gasparilla going on. We have a full, I say, pirate convergence.
Yes, absolutely.
Going on in Tampa this week. And look, the Stadium Series is going to be an awesome game, but it's also going to be a little bit of a different game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there is one big reason why I think the Bruins might have an advantage in this actual game itself. We're going to talk about that. Plus, a lot of moves have already been made at the NHL Trade Deadline, even though it's still a month and several weeks ahead of the NHL Trade Deadline. A couple of our former beloved Tampa Bay Lightning members have been involved. Is the clock ticking on the Lightning to make a move? If they're going to do something, they need to do it sooner rather than later. We'll talk about that. And fighting in hockey. Do you like it? Do you not like it? It's an interesting kind of debate that spurred from one of our topics yesterday. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But first things first, Greg, of course, Stadium Series this week. And the big news that came out yesterday, the renderings of the rink and the design around it, sweet as hell.
Absolutely love it.
Oh my God, the pirate map. For those of you, in Greg, I think you saw it too, just like the little Easter eggs that were like actually on the words around the map.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it was so cool. So some of the ones that were out there, we have Kucherov Cove. They missed an opportunity to not have Cove spelled with a K, but it's fine. You have Gensel's Grotto, Vasilevsky Bay, Hedman Reef, Lord Stanley Point, Sorelli's Cliff, Vinnick's Voyage, Bettman's Bay, Boston Harbor, and then just the best one of all, just Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
Just couldn't find another one there. But yeah, this
super creative stuff.
Oh yeah. This looks awesome. I will say that. And look, I know that after being critical of how the NHL kind of presented the Winter Classic in Florida, this is some of the best work I have seen from a rink design yet. And I'm not saying that because there's a Lightning logo on my hat right now. It legitimately is one of the coolest designs and coolest themes in an outdoor game I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the map on the outside looks just so well done, especially with all the dotted lines. Like, it's got that pirate-esque feel. I read somewhere that they ordered almost like 200 barrels just to like really lean into the pirate theme. So they're just going to be everywhere, and they have ships that they're bringing in and all kinds of stuff. They're just, like you said, leaning into the Gasparilla, and it kind of like ends the Gasparilla celebration sort of. And I think that's really cool. I've never done Gasparilla. I'm excited to experience it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the arena just looks like the place to be if you're celebrating.
I hear it's crazy. I have a couple of relatives actually flying out this week to go down and experience Gasparilla. Mm-hmm. And combine that with a lot of fans coming in for, an outdoor NHL game. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Bruins fans coming around from, not only Florida, but all over the country. It's going to be a fun party. But that in that kind of leads me to the next question, Greg, because the Stadium Series, it is going to be an awesome event. But let's not forget, it is also a hockey game against the Boston Bruins, a team in our division, a very tight division. They're in a playoff spot. They're on a very hot run night right now. These are going to be two very important points for the Tampa Bay Lightning here, Greg. And in your mind, for lack of a better word, how do you stress kind of normalcy for the Bolts to go into a game like this?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it actually, I think maybe a week ago or ish, somewhere around there. You got to discard the celebratory feeling of this game. I think, like you said, both these teams super hot right now. Even the Bruins have been cooking lately. And I think you got to remember, these are massive points in the long run. The season's coming to a close really quickly. We're more than halfway, and you're going into the Olympic break, and you want to enter with more points, especially against a division rival. And like you said, I think the Bruins do have an advantage to some extent. They have played more of these games, right? And we also know that this is a place where a lot of people migrate from Boston.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when I go to some of these games and they're regular Boston games, the Boston crowd is loud. And this is going to be interesting. This is going to be really, really interesting. I think it would be foolish to think that everyone in that arena is a Lightning fan. Absolutely foolish. I think there's going to be a lot of Bruins fans, and you just got to embrace the audience, process it while it's beginning, take your first shift, play hockey. You just got to play the game. You got to win the game.
Yeah. You and I talked about this a little bit last week. It's almost, and I can't remember which coach it was. I think it might have been, I don't know. It might have been Walsh from, San Diego, or San Francisco. But I think he always said, like, for the Super Bowl, it's like, go out there, like, have the national anthem, have one look around, say this is cool, and then go treat this like it's another game. I almost think the Lightning have to do that. The only other kind of hitch in that plan, Greg, is that there are some big differences between an outdoor game and, let's just say, a regular game. And Eduardo Encina at Tampa Bay Times had a really good article about that if you guys want to go out and read that. But obviously we know things like the ice. The ice is different in every outdoor game just because of the weather. There's also some little things in that article. Zemgus Girgensons played an outdoor game in Buffalo, said his teammates actually made a conscious effort to get rid of the puck sooner because it hurt more when there was hits, when there's checks, when they fell on the ice because it was so cold. You also had John Cooper talking about that game in Nashville a couple years ago that the Lightning played it and said, I was kind of surprised at how different, communication was. Like, yeah, it was like 65,000 fans, but because the seats were different, you could actually sort of, it sounded different on the ice because, there weren't fans right behind us. There's a little bit of a tunnel there. Like, it was loud, but it was a different kind of loud. And to me, that leads to me thinking the key to these outdoor games are adjustments. Like, you don't know how the ice is going to be. You don't know how things are going to look. It's a night game, but you don't know if, like, the lights are going to cause, like, any sort of glare. There is a lot of variables that differ from game to game, from, like, venue to venue. And I think, Greg, I hate to say it, but that to me is maybe the biggest reason that the Bruins have a slight advantage going into this stadium series. Because Boston, as we talked about, they seem to play in an outdoor game every other year.
For real.
Like it used to be like them, Pittsburgh, and Chicago just kind of rotating, who would play at a stadium series, and they would play in like the weirdest matchup possible just to get in it. But at the same time, they're used to playing. Like, they have guys like David Pastrnak, who's been in a lot of these and knows how to adjust after, the first period if the ice isn't going right, or, some players that have been there a while that know, that you might have to actually physically play your game a little bit different based on some of the conditions around. That to me feels like an advantage for Boston. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, you know what? You kind of changed my tune on this. At first, I didn't think so. And now the more I analyze this, I agree with you. I think they do have more experience doing this, and they do have a better understanding of how this maybe will feel sensationally as far as like the awe of how much is around you and the location that you're in, it being outside. The Lightning don't have that. And that does matter. I think you're absolutely right. I think it does matter. I think it's going to come down to how effectively they can process what is going on and discard it and play hockey. And I think that's really going to determine this game. I really think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And it's interesting that Eduardo had seen an article because there's a lot of things that you wouldn't have thought about.
Right.
And it is interesting. And look, the Bolts are a really good team. I will say, like I said, John Cooper, I think, is one of the best coaches in the NHL, and he has certainly made his living on adjustments, roster, switching, the strategy up here or there. But, it's a little bit different when you're adjusting to the venue at which the game is played.
Right.
So if anybody can do it, it's the Lightning. But I do think going into this game, I do think that is a little bit of a plus in the column for the Boston Bruins.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's going to be interesting. We are, of course, going to have a full other, preview of the Winter Classic or Stadium Series. It's early, folks. We're going to have a full other preview coming up later this week. A lot more coming up from this game. But more to get to on today's show. There's been more trades across the NHL, and we're still a long way away from the deadline. And that got us thinking, is the clock ticking on Tampa Bay Lightning to make a move, and do they need to do it sooner rather than later? We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked on Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there's got to be a better way. And luckily, there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O. It's the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Quo makes everything simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everybody who uses it sees the full conversation thread with each customer, which makes replies faster and more personal. It also works right from your phone or computer, and you can keep everything on your existing number. No need to buy any more phones, laptops, equipment. Plus, Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. So make this a year where no opportunity and no customer slip away. Try Quo for 3, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnhl. Again, that is quo.com/lockedonnhl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome back to Locked on Lightning. Nick Morgan here alongside Greg Steven. And Greg, let's talk about the trade deadline. It is still a long ways away, but it does seem like the clock is ticking a little bit. We had more moves in the NHL yesterday, including one of our old buddies. Actually, I guess technically two of our old buddies, if you count Matthew Darche and the Islanders. Yeah. Andre Palat traded to the New York Islanders for a couple of mid-round picks and a prospect. Obviously Darche knows Andre Palat well. Greg, part of me saw this trading. I was like, man, maybe the Lightning should have kicked the tires on Palat for old time's sake. Maybe a little reunion just to shore up, this bottom couple of lines. And then I remembered what Palat's contract is.
It's like $6 million a year, right?
Two more years at $6 million per year, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
not so great.
No.
I mean, I think they got Siplikov in return too, but it's just tough trade, man. $6 million for Palat. I love Palat to death, but I don't know if that's really worth it. I don't think that's what the Lightning need right now. But yeah, definitely stuff turning in the NHL right now, everywhere.
Yeah,
stuff's moving.
Yeah, Carson Soucy also traded to the New York Islanders via the New York Rangers, which, number one, if nothing else, Matthew Darsh, give him credit for some interdivisional tri-state area reunion, because we had Andre Palat and Carson Soucy. So now he's had trades with both the Rangers and Devils, which used to be kind of a big no-no for the Islanders.
Exactly.
So
it was like the second time they've ever traded together, I think, or something like that.
I think they swapped draft picks at a draft like 4 years ago, and that was like the first trade that they ever did between those two teams.
Right.
But let's get into kind of how this impacts the Lightning moving forward, because we talked about this a while back, Greg. The way that trades are happening right now with the Olympics coming up and just some of the other breaks across the NHL in general, trades seem to be done faster, and they seem to be happening way in advance of the deadline. It feels like teams are being more aggressive to go out there and try to bring in a guy they need. And we've already seen some of the biggest targets that would have been sort of on the deadline list this year already gone, already sold. So my question is, Greg, that for the Lightning, is there more, I guess, pressure on Julien Brisebois to go out and make a move if he's going to make it? Or is this a case of it's in the Lightning's best interest to kind of sit back and see what's out there?
It's a great question. And I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do they need to make a move at all? And I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I've been going back and forth myself, because part of me says, wow, this team is just unbelievable right now. What do you really want to change anything? Then I tell myself, you can always get better, right? And if you can, why wouldn't you? The answer is, I think you wait. I think you wait because while I see there being a pressure to make a move because everyone else is, and you're kind of running out of who's left, I do think that if you get stuck not being able to make a move, or there isn't anyone left that you care to sign because they've already been dealt, I don't think that's a big deal either. So I think it's actually fine to stand pat here, especially with the Olympics coming up. I think it's cool. Just let everyone heal, come back. And I think you have 2 weeks from return of that to get stuff done if you need to. I think I'm cool with sitting right now. The Lightning look way too good, right? I mean, Radish has taken over the defense, and the rest of them look solid defensively. And the forward group has looked amazing everywhere on the ice. And I would call all four lines solid right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you maybe have a spot or two if you really want to make an upgrade. But I think you can also just sit there and you'd have a pretty high caliber playoff team.
Yeah, it comes down to, first off, I agree with you. I don't think the Lightning need to make a move. And that also is equally, because of that, in a position why they can go out and make a move, because it is, you have capital. You can go out there and not necessarily need to overpay or target a specific guy. You can find some help, maybe an upgrade that really helps your team for, not like 2 first-round picks like they did for Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand last year. You also have, I guess, an opportunity to maybe do something aggressive with an expiring contract like Oliver Bjorkstrand, somebody that I think can go out and help maybe, a team sort of looking for somebody like him and sort of use that capital to go out and maybe make a bigger trade and maybe find an upgrade for Bjorkstrand on that 3rd and 4th line, because he's meandered sort of down to the 2nd line right now, even with injuries, which is kind of telling, or down to the 4th line. I guess the second part of that 3rd and 4th line. But yeah, Greg, I guess the other question it all boils down to is, who are you targeting right now?
Great question.
Because as we mentioned, a lot of the bigger targets and even some of the depth targets are kind of off the board. Kiefer Sherwood was a big one. He just got traded. Quinn Hughes was a big one. He got traded. So now we're kind of, the board is getting smaller. And if you look at some of the top names on the list, Artemi Panarin, Dougie Hamilton, Braden Shen, Ryan O'Reilly's on there. They're all players with a lot of money and a lot of term left. So it is going to be a little bit of a situation to maneuver.
Yeah, look, if I can splash and make a Panarin trade, I think I'm doing it. I mean, pending what they want me to give up, right? But like, if you're gonna have Panarin to this team, oh my, that is some dangerous stuff right there. Guys like Dougie Hamilton, though, super injury prone in my eyes, constantly hurt. I think I'm staying away from guys like that. I think you don't want to upgrade into something that is just too risky in a way that could just eventually hurt the team. And I think he's a guy as a good example where your team is so beat up, especially defensively. Like, you're going to sign a defenseman that's constantly injured. I just don't think that's the play either. So I'm standing pat right now. I just don't think there's anything that interests me enough unless, again, I can rob the Rangers somehow, which I don't think is possible. I think I'm sitting still.
Somebody did float the idea of Panarin. I can't remember who. They didn't say
remember
Lightning. That. Yeah, the Lightning were talking.
Yes.
They didn't say the Lightning were talking or anything like that. They just said
it was just this would be cool.
Yeah, they just said this would be cool. It would be a fit, and here's how they would get around the salary.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen at all.
I don't either.
But whatever. It sounds cool. Greg, the other name I would throw out there is our old buddy Blake Coleman.
Yes.
And that's somebody that I think his name has been kicked around a little bit. Obviously, he's got good history here. He knows how the Lightning want to play. He knows John Cooper. And I think we saw with Yanni Gourde last year, he can sort of fit into sort of any kind of role that the Lightning need from him. And I think he does give a little bit of a different dimension in that bottom six forward group.
I agree. I think he's actually injured right now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he's been out, yeah.
But I mean, regardless, if he can come back and he's healthy, he does remind me of a player like Yanni, where bring him to Tampa and all of a sudden he's a new man.
Yeah.
And I could see that definitely being the case. I agree with you there.
Yeah, there's some other intriguing names out there. Boone Jenner is an unrestricted free agent, a center, and as we mentioned, faceoffs have kind of been an issue for the Lightning, and it's also Braden Point is still out. You have some more depth there. I'm also interested. Somebody like Ryan Hartman, maybe not the same player he was a few years ago, but sort of fits that sort of veteran grinder vibe. So there's options out there if JBB wants to do something, but I agree with what you said earlier. I don't think the Lightning need to make a move, and that's a great position to be in, personally.
Yeah, agreed. And you know what? Let the other teams eat this clock that looks like it's happening right now. Make them all rush and make plays they shouldn't make, and the Lightning can sit here and be like, you know what? We go into the playoffs with this team, so be it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that's a good way to look at it. Let's get on to our next topic, and it's one that we sort of spurred from a discussion yesterday. Fighting in hockey. I said I thought it was underrated. I thought it was something that's underrated in the NHL today. We got some pushback on that statement. So we're going to be talking about the role that fighting has in the NHL now. Is it a thing of the past? And basically just how it plays into today's game. More on that coming up when we come back. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel this season. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, and it's the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to close, because Super Bowl 60 is right around the corner, and FanDuel is making sure you're in right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game that everyone's been waiting for, where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to final whistle, whether you're going for the Patriots or riding with the Seahawks. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. it's not a bad deal. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. That's why it's the last call for football on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. To get started, just visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app so you can play on your phone. Again, FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL and Super Bowl 60. Welcome back to Locked on Lightning. Nick Morgan here alongside Greg Steven. And Greg, let's talk about fighting in hockey. This was sort of born from a conversation that we had yesterday about the Lightning maybe being a little bit more physical, not afraid to drop the gloves this season. Mm-hmm. I said fighting has an underrated role in the NHL, and I truly believe that. I do think it is still a way to police yourselves on the ice. And look, like, you're not, I know that people sort of roll their eyes at this, but if you check the captain and then you have to turn around and get punched in the face a couple of times, I think that is a deterrent to not go after, your team's captain or one of your team's skill players. Mm-hmm. I think it is sort of a reaction for, a big hit or a big play earlier in the game, maybe a hit that injured somebody. I think fighting still has its place in hockey. We got a lot of people that sort of disagreed with that yesterday. So, Greg, I'll ask you, where do you stand on fighting in the NHL and sort of what its role is?
I think fighting absolutely belongs in hockey and the NHL. I mean, I have played this sport my entire life at a competitive level, and let me tell you, it belongs there. It's just like you said. It's like a self-policing that is necessary for this game. And a good example of this is goaltending. I think it's a misconception to think that you can touch a goalie and not get punched in the face. That's just what it is. And look, I was that guy too. You touch the goalie, I'm going to hurt you. That's just how this works. And I think it would be unreasonable to expect the players to just discard this etiquette that has existed for many, many, many years and all of a sudden say, no, if he hits your goalie, you can't do anything about it. Like, what do you expect if it's not that? That being said, I do think the NHL has gotten to a place where even on hits that are clean and hits that maybe don't necessarily warrant a reaction, they've kind of started to pick fights over them. And I don't love it. I think there is a time and a place. Absolutely. I don't think it should ever be gone. I do think sometimes they get a little carried away. I think I'm trying to think of a great example in recent history. And you could maybe argue the hit on Dominic James the other day, actually.
That's the one I was going to ask you about, because that's when I came to mind. It was like, I love seeing Nick Paul stand up for him, but also, did Nick Paul really need to stand up for him there?
Right. And I don't, if I'm remembering correctly, it was not even a penalty, right? And you get hit hard in the boards. That's part of the game too. And I don't think that warrants throwing your fists around. I think you get hit clean, so be it, right? I mean, that's just part of the sport. But if you're going to deliver a dirty hit, touch the goalie, like you said, go after specific people in a more malicious way, I'm all for it. But yeah, I think sometimes it's getting out of hand. I think there's just too much like, oh, I'm coming to the defense of this guy for whatever reason, but he's his own man too. And I think, you get hit clean, keep your head up. Don't put yourself in that position. I think that's really the answer there. And yeah, so I could see it both ways, but again, hockey belongs in the sport. Hockey. Fighting belongs in the sport 100%.
Yeah. It's, the antithesis to that is, remember the Sean Dursey, Declan Carlisle thing from yesterday, where we both kind of looked at Sean Dursey, and we're like, what do you expect, man? Like, you're jabbing your stick under the franchise goalie. Like, of course somebody's going to rip your head off. That's like that's the situation I'm thinking of. The only number one, I do agree with what you're saying. And I do think maybe the Dominic James situation was not necessarily needed to be like an instigator in a fight. The only other thing I will say is it can be like a deterrent and from making those kind of hits. Like, if it was, Ian Cole on Nikita Kucherov, and he just levels Nikita Kucherov at center ice. And then, he turns around, and not really a good example of this on Lightning right now, but, like a big enforcer that just grabs him, cuts him open in the eye, throws him down on the ice, something like that. Our teams are going to be maybe a little less aggressive in going after somebody like Nikita Kucherov.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of, I always think back to when the Red Wings drafted Steve Yzerman, and Steve Yzerman's first line mates were Joe Kocur and Gerard Gallant.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever the coach of the Red Wings were it's like, yeah, that's our sign that these two people are here to make sure Steve Yzerman does not get touched.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the, it's sort of that deterrent. It's the threat of there's guys out there that will kick your ass if you, even think about playing aggressive with some of our best players. I think that can be useful. Now, I think where you get yourself into trouble is when, let's say you're a 6'4" Finnish guy and don't fight, and you start picking up 2-minute penalties trying to chase them down. I think that's a different situation, but I do think you have to be smart about it, but I do think that you can still have it be a deterrent if done right.
Yes. And let me give you one more example that I've thought of in recent NHL history for why I think it also belongs. And I don't know if you saw anything with the Barzell slash maybe 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of stuff comes out when you don't fight, I think. And
I agree.
Barzell's not a fighter, and he's not that guy, right? I'm not saying that he's not going to do it if he has to, but I think that's a place where I would say, why not fight? He chose to slash, obviously, at the foot of Marchment, thank you. But right there, that's a place where I think, you know what? Fine. I agree with you. He did him dirty. It looked like a knee on knee initially, the Marchment hit. So he was trying to get revenge for his teammate, and I get that. The slash is not the way.
Well,
the fight is the way.
In the other piece of that was that Marchment went after Schaefer earlier too. Like another big hit went out and then had another big hit on him.
Mm-hmm.
And neither were called. I don't know if neither were a penalty, but that's sort of what happens when there's not really going to be any punishment, but it's still like go after a guy. And they asked Matthew Barzal about it after the game, and he just kind of shrugged. And he's like, he just said, don't go after Matthew Schaefer. Like that's
right.
Don't go after Matthew Schaefer.
Yeah.
I mean, you are going to get those sort of kind of hits if players don't drop the gloves. We've seen 100%. It a lot.
Yeah. And if they can't fight, you're going to watch them slash each other just like that. And I think that that's arguably much worse because now you're swinging weapons around, I'd rather them face off personally.
Yeah. And you know what? Sorry if this makes me sound barbaric. I just like watching hockey fights.
Well, yeah, of course.
I think it's fun.
So fun.
I think the crowd gets into it. I know it's probably not the healthiest thing to do in an NHL game, but I don't know. It's just fun to watch, and it's been
part of the sport, man.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. And I know there's probably a lot of different opinions in there. If you would like to weigh in, make sure you leave a comment on this YouTube video. You can also drop us a line on social media. We're Locked On Lightning, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much anywhere you scroll. Hey, be sure to follow the show and subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Not only helps us out with our numbers, but it lets you guys stay in the loop so you always know when we have new content out for you. That's going to do it on today's Locked On Lightning. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. We will see you then.